So, of course, we're just going to start with the quick disclaimers. You can take a screenshot of this or read this in the FAQs, but I'm going to go over a quick disclaimer summary, which is this may contain forward-looking statements, no earnings claims or financial advice given. We will be talking a lot about educational stuff and how that does with monetary policy today. But again, that's for educational purposes, so there's no financial advice in this presentation. The digital rewards are used for utility. You need to DYOR or do your own research, and the nodes and blockchains are governed by the DGF or the Distributed Governance Framework, which is all of us as node operators. So today we're going to talk about the game of Monopoly. And this will be eventually getting into Monopoly Reimagined from infinite printing to finite prosperity. So it'll be a journey from endless currency creation to collective economic empowerment, exploring what happens when we redesign the rules of the game. So again, like I said, we're going to talk about how economies work. If you're not too familiar about fiat currencies and what the current Web2 systems use, really you could actually break out the rule book of the game of Monopoly and learn about how it operates and why it's such a bad systematic problem and why having something of a finite resource as a means of exchange is a much better solution to resolving a lot of these problems because we talk a lot about tech giants and these conglomerates and investors that extract value, and we don't really hit too much on the extraction of value on what we use for a means of exchange as well. Like it's constantly being inflated and the circulating supply of it is constantly being increased and the purchasing power of our dollars are being devalued without really realizing like it's gone generations to where it's been such a slow decay that we feel the burden over time of this, and it's kind of like a hidden or unnoticed tax and devaluation, and the world suffers from that and only a few benefit. So I want to open your eyes to this a lot. And again, I know that we're talking about, purchasing power of something. I want to make sure to, that disclaimer of like, this isn't financial advice. This isn't, putting any type of valuation on our tokens or anything like that. It's just to open your mind to, again, that infinite versus finiteness and the power that that can actually have within an economy. So this is the flaw with the original game of Monopoly. Now picture a group of players sitting down to play Monopoly. Like maybe you just got the board out, y'all put it on your kitchen table, and you start to play. And at first, it's really straightforward and engaging. Everyone gets issued their currency, and the board is completely empty. So you start to roll the dice and kind of start moving around. You start to buy properties. You start collecting rent and stacking your little houses on the game. And you watch this board's economy come to life. And the players kind of trade with each other, they strategize, but then they're also competing against each other, right? But there's a quiet issue lurking beneath the surface. So the game is always very even and fair in the beginning because you have the same players, they all started together at the same time, they were all issued the same amount of currency, and it kind of can build a stable economy. But as long as the bank can print money, that game continues to get worse and worse. So when the players lose track of the value of that, it it really does start to linger and become worse. New currency enters the system to keep everyone playing, and the illusion of prosperity persists indefinitely. This is a really slippery slope that can erode. So imagine this game stretching indefinitely. So, players actually rotate out throughout lifetimes. So a few players in that first iteration, they started to accumulate powerful monopolies. I mean, it's literally the game of Monopoly. The prime properties, they get the most hotels, the strongest cash flows. But remember, this is a continuation game. So as some original players, they may quit playing, or they may pass on some of their inheritance to the next player. But whenever new players arrive, the bank responds by issuing more currency to maintain that liquidity. So think about what this does. The initial play where properties trade at reasonable prices. Remember, each one actually has its own little stamp on the board, how much it is, and those original players start to participate. They land on that board and they say, "I want to purchase this." So they take their money, which is the means of exchange that the players can use within the rules of the game, and that wealth distributes organically. But as that money gets injected, so like new players come on board, they get issued their currency. The bank takes more money into existence that wasn't there, and they keep players solvent and they keep the game active. So if there wasn't any more money in the bank, they created more and issued it to the new players. This creates a price inflation. So the same properties cost exponentially more, but they cost more just because of a number, not from improvements, but from excess currency. And if you think about this, so let's say within the original game of players, there was a set amount of currency that was circulating in this little world of this game. But as more gets injected into it, think about it. If there's more dollars now in circulation, it became worth less. So it would take more of that currency to purchase the same things within the game. So if there was only six people playing this game and they started the game and they saw the rules, they saw the cost of a property, and they were fine with their economy. But imagine six more people joined this game and they were issued the same amount of currency that was already on the table. If there's more of this currency within the game, everyone all of a sudden realizes there's twice as much of it. So now everything that I had, in front of me is worth half as much as it was. So I'm going to have to start charging twice as much for what I was charging so that I can actually still get the same value of this currency. Because I don't want to take it the same amount because it's worth less. Like if my dollar was worth a dollar and the circulating supply of it just doubled, now it's essentially worth 50 cents on the dollar. So I have to get two for every $1 I used to get to keep up. And that's where that price inflation comes. So the value erodes. Average players spend larger stacks of money for the identical opportunities that they did. And so if you want to learn everything that you want to about how fiat currencies and fractional reserve banking works, and you have the Monopoly game at home, go get the rule book and go read rule number 11. This is literally a picture from the rule book of the game Monopoly. And rule 11 is, what if the bank runs out of money? So some players think the bank is bankrupt if it runs out of money. The bank never goes bankrupt. To continue playing, use slips of paper to keep track of each player's bank transactions until the bank enough until the bank has enough paper money to operate again. The banker may also issue new money on slips of ordinary paper. This is no different than fiat banks and fractional reserve banking. They can create money out of thin air. They do it through quantitative easement, and now it's gotten even worse, and they've done what's called helicopter money. You can look up that term. So here in the United States, we have the Federal Reserve, which is not federal, nor is it a reserve. It's a private entity that maintains our monetary systems, and all fiats across the whole world operate very, very similarly. So in Monopoly, there's always a way to continue. If the bank runs out of cash, it can create more money to keep the game going. Translation. The system has an ongoing capacity to print more currency to fund continued play, effectively eroding value over time. This mirrors how fiat currency is issued to fund debt and stimulus, causing purchasing power to decline. What once bought a house, a meal, or a day's basics now requires increasingly larger amounts. The average person finds it harder to pass and go and collect 200 because prices rise faster than wages. So if you wonder why, a cheeseburger or a soft drink used to cost $2 or $4 and now it costs $10, this is because of that devaluation of the purchasing power of the dollar. And again, that last part, that prices rise faster than wages, because the corporations are always going to adjust their prices, like I was talking about earlier, that it has to charge more to get the same amount of purchasing power. And that unfortunately does always outpace the wages that have to catch up to it. Where if you look at old minimum wages, I've looked at some of them in the past where it's crazy to think about, whenever a decent wage used to be $1 an hour. And now, $15 an hour, $20 an hour for a basic job. And that reflection of pass and go and collect 200, you know, unfortunately, like most people in the world don't actually play the game of Monopoly. The game of Monopoly is to acquire assets, right? But whenever all of this devaluation happens, it's harder to play this game of Monopoly. If we've gone through 4 iterations of rotating players around, they may only be able to roll the dice and go around the board. And they're constantly being bombarded trying to pay for the things that they land on. And they can only do the pass and go and collect 200, and that 200 has kind of stayed the same. It hasn't gone up with the inflationary cost of the rest of the things that they're landing on the board. So that $200 doesn't even go as far as it used to from the earlier players in the game. And that's not a fun way to play Monopoly, where you're constantly just going around paying everyone else at a devalued amount and you can only collect 200 and go. So everyone's not a builder in that. And the working reality is most people work, earn, and pay rising costs, but struggle to accumulate durable wealth. They're always catching up, never able to gain real control. There's asset concentration. That real sustainable wealth creation concentrates in the hands of those who own the underlying assets, the homes, the stocks, the businesses, and the properties. And that blocked path of, middle class gets to pass and go, collect a paycheck, but the path to prosperity is blocked by rising prices and endless money injection. So, picture a revolutionary version of Monopoly, where those fundamental rules are created and shared by the players rather than having a concentration and inflation by a central authority. You would have a finite currency where money supply is fixed and it's backed by the collective value of the board's economy. So no endless printing. Let's take that bank's inflationary model of always being able to create the currency out of the picture, where you would have collective ownership. All the players collectively own the core system. They own the rules, they own the bank, they own the public goods on the board. And now you can actually have growth through participation. New players now expand the ecosystem's value rather than diluting it. That network effect that we've talked about, where you have a larger community, a larger player base, they effectively amplify productivity instead of diluting it in a system like this. And you have deflationary momentum. So as productivity grows, goods and services become relatively cheaper to acquire because value is captured by finite currency. So again, if more money doesn't get injected into the system as an infinite system, it gets injected as a finite system, it's actually deflationary. So as that's shared and more players come on board, the purchasing power of that currency actually goes up because there's less of it to share within the players of the game. There's not, more of the currency to be shared amongst the players. There's actually less of it. So whenever someone takes their dollar, it may be worth $2 or $1.25 within the game for all of the different goods and services. So it actually goes a longer way instead of a shorter way. So this would be the new mechanics and how it would work. The core principles. Because it's a fixed supply, a set number of board coins would circulate to enable exchanges between the players. So there's no unlimited printing. You would have a true like democratic governance. And I'm not talking about democratic as far as, political views. Like I mean the true definition of where the players vote on the rules. And, with the property taxes that come with that, the public goods and the resource allocation, the players truly have the control over this and not this central board that was already uh, set into motion with the rules of the game whenever the players came into it. The players themselves decided that the old rules were no longer beneficial for them to play. They had to be changed so that everyone could actually have an enjoyable experience within this. You would have value appreciation. So that currency purchasing power rises as new players contribute because base assets are collectively managed. And it would have merit-based access. So the entry barriers focus on capability and value contributed, not ability to outspend with printed money that you're constantly chasing. So let's map this out. Finite digital assets have a fixed supply. Digital currencies are carefully managed inflation models with clear caps that preserve purchasing power over time. They have decentralized governance, where participants vote on protocol upgrades, fee structures, and treasury spending, aligning incentives with ecosystem health. Participation rewards. So activity yields influence and fair share. Validations, liquidity provision, and governance participation are compensated. Deflationary utility. As the network grows and use cases expand, unit economics improve, making transactions more valuable and efficient over time. And there's user-owned infrastructure. Moving from centralized control to community stewardship reduces single points of failure and distributes value broadly. Remember, we're all players in this game. We're not looking at that central authority of rule sets anymore. We rewrote the rules so that we can continue playing this game, so that we can continue thriving together instead of it all being in a broken system that's constantly funneling to a small subset of people. And quality acquisition. So collective revenue flowing back to the players allows for better products and services to be acquired and provided. So there's no longer, a deflated value of purchasing power constantly feeding the few, and it's just based on survival. It flows back to all of the players that are participating in it. And because it is deflationary, not inflationary, the quality of all of the things on the board can be continued to increase. It can provide a better quality of whatever product or service that is, and it may actually be able to introduce new products and services. so that we're not playing the old game that has become mundane. Like things can actually get better in a system like this instead of just being maintained. So before and after, and this is just a visual comparison. In the old game of Monopoly, you have unlimited money printing by that central bank. In the new one, you would actually have a fixed currency supply. In the old game, you have few monopolies that control prime assets. Remember, that's the original players that started the game. They had that fair model because their money was finite at that time. So everyone had already agreed on the value of their means of exchange as they were playing the game. But as it got printed, um, and people started to acquire all of the different assets on the board, they almost set their flag in the ground, they grabbed their stake. And as it began to get devalued and more people started to join the game, there was really no fair way for them to climb the ladder to gain other assets and really have that same fair advantage that the early Monopoly players had. In the new system, we would have shared ownership of core systems. So you can still play that game of Monopoly. You can still provide all of the services. You can still come in and compete. It's still a competitive game, but you have true fair value of what you provide to the other players in the game. And this has a fair advantage no matter your starting point, so that you can come in, have the same purchasing power that the early adopters had. And actually, as more and more players come in, the purchasing power actually increases for all so that you can actually have a better experience and a way to provide more efforts and quality of products and services that are applied to the entire game. So it actually becomes better as more and more people join this game. In the old game, you have rising rents and escalating prices because of that inflation of the currency. In the new game, you actually have voting and governance decisions and a decreasing price because of the purchasing power of that finite resource as more players come in. In the old game, you have wealth concentration in a few hands. Again, that was those early players. In the new game, value grows through participation. So again, you can come into the game no matter what point. You know, now early adopters always have a little bit of an advantage, but as more players come into the game, it makes everyone's gaming experience more powerful. In the old game, middle players perpetually struggling, and that's kind of like that middle class that they're constantly just rolling their dice, hoping that they don't land on anything else and they just keep passing and going so that they can at least try to accumulate some level of money within their game. But they're always struggling because they can't really get enough to acquire any type of assets. And they're trying, like it's not a that they're not working hard. They actually are trying to provide value to the world, and the monetary system literally just is not allowing them to be able to do that. And in the new game, that deflationary pressure benefits all. So a new player is welcomed into the game. They provide the hard work that they're wanting to provide, and they can actually climb within the system. They can actually be rewarded to do so and actually start providing value to all of the players inside of the game instead of just struggling. So redesigning that game and reshaping reality. Monopoly teaches us about property, it teaches us about risk, it teaches us about cash flow, but it also it truly does mirror how money works in the real world. When the bank can print endlessly, wealth concentrates, prices rise, and the middle players struggle. If we shift from chasing after more money to build shared, accountable, and productive systems, everyone can have a fair, more resilient experience. So you go to a finite currency, which can preserve value. You have collective stewardship, which distributes the power. You have participation rewards, which incentivizes true contribution. And then you go to shared prosperity, where everyone can benefit in a game and system like this. So, John, I don't know if you have anything that you want to chime in there, but I know that, the game of Monopoly is fun for one round of players, but you don't really think about how the world operates as it gains new players, and that's always what's missing from the game, and why it kind of teaches us about the world if you really think about it. And that generational loss of purchasing power of the dollar that's not really realized unless you really think about it.
Yeah, geez, that's an amazing analogy, Jake, and it's I mean you really said everything. I think for this group, it's definitely important to understand, that. And I think a lot of people like are here because they know that like the world feels broken, right? They feel like they're connected into this new type of system. So like understanding those fundamentals is super important because I think the biggest takeaway from this is not only just understanding like the broken system and un understanding fundamentally ours, but I think the key piece in our system is understanding how value is created through community growth. Because in a traditional system, and this might be moving away from your analogy, or maybe not, but in a traditional system, like a company wins, like when they grow their customer base, right? In our system, like we all win, like as our community grows, because you have more people connecting into the blockchain, more people using products and services. And because all that value is flowing back through, it makes our token and our community stronger because there's no corporation just extracting everything. And so, like, my whole point to saying that, guys, is like, we all want what we're doing to be valuable, right? There's no button for it. Like the button is every new person that we add to the network, every new user of product or service, and it just gets, like we did Gala, right? Like everybody thinks kind of like with Gala, it was like it went from like nothing to all of a sudden something in 2 seconds, and there was just some magic thing that happened. That wasn't the case. It was a slow grind for like 2 years of building the community, like doing calls like this, presentations, like bringing more people on board, and then developing cool products and services. And then it was very slow. It went from like literally having zero value. It was fake monopoly money, right? um, to having a little value for a while. And then, about 2 years later, we had like a good year where it went from like practically nothing all the way up to 87 cents. And it was crazy. But why and how did that happen? It happened because everybody recognized what it was we were doing and saw the value in it and went out and shared and grew our community of people that added more value. And that value is reflective in the token. We never know what our tokens are going to be, but one thing we understand is that that value of the token, whatever it will be, because we don't know, there's some type of magic equation that the bigger the community, the more value in it, right? And so if we're just sitting here on the sidelines, just kind of like throwing some money in on some nodes and waiting for it to happen, it's like we're causing its delay if we're not doing anything. I don't expect everybody to be an expert salesperson, but everybody can share. It's something that we do anyways. Think about it. Ladies, you find a good product out there, right? That gives you a glow up. You're like, dang, I'm gonna tell all my lady friends. You're sharing. It's that simple. We do it every day. And like there's examples all over the place. Christmas is coming up, right? You might get some cool gadget where you're gonna use it and have a good experience, and guess what you're going to do? You're going to be having a conversation with your friends or somewhere, a colleague, and you're going to start talking about it, and guess what they're going to do? They're going to go buy it because of what you told them. And it's the same thing here, guys. We're doing the same thing here than we're doing in the real world. And it's just that as soon as we can realize how much power we have as community members to actually move the needle, the sooner the needle will move. And that's really the whole point of like my opportunity calls during the week and kind of these presentations here, just to make sure you guys understand that and feel empowered. And we'll have different ones too where we can dig in a lot more. Like maybe we'll do some deeper Win blockchain trainings to understand for people who wanna start to start to move the needle. Like, how do I maximize this? How does the system work? You know, but it's important that we have these type of conversations so we can understand how it works, you know? So yeah, I think it's great, Jake. Super good analogy with the Monopoly board. And if people don't realize that we're actually playing a game of Monopoly, they'll just continue to pass go forever and not even be able to acquire assets in the existing game or the existing world right now, you know, because it has that design flaw of that um you know, like the world is already saturated with people who own the assets. And if you don't wake up to the fact of the game being played, you're just going to be collecting that 200, you know, trading your dollars for hours in that old system. So, yeah, I'm kind of like I'm not really sure like where to go with it, but I think the most important part of it that I wanted to get across is that like we can stop creating value for the board owners and really start creating value for our community. And you know, I'll kind of say this again before I turn it back over and we can open it up for questions and whatnot, but the biggest key takeaway, I think, that is the lack of understanding is that how is token value, like where does it come from? You know, fundamentally. And it literally comes from the size of our community. Bigger community, more token value. Smaller community, lower token value. I think it's that simple. And there's no exact equation that can give you an exact figure. It's like a mirror. You know, the bigger the community, the more robust and powerful our token becomes because it's fundamentally driven by like community and revenue-backed fundamentals, you know?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, that truly is the key takeaway that, you know, we as a community have reinvented the rules of the game and now we're playing it. And the way for us to thrive is to invite new players to the game of Monopoly. You know, in the old game, it hurts when more players come into the game. You know, your currency is constantly being devalued as far as its purchasing power for the things inside the game. But with a finite currency being played inside the game, the purchasing power for, you know, the products and services and assets inside of the game actually increases. So if like let's say we're playing this game and passing and going is almost like operating your node. You know, you're collecting the rewards for the game, and let's say like one of the pieces, like the boardwalk on the game, is like for instance, it's BlockBot AI. So I can actually pass and go, use my rewards that I got, and actually pay for my BlockBot AI whenever I land on that piece. But I also actually own that at the same time. So whenever I invite a new player in and they land on that piece, I'm actually rewarded, and I'm rewarded something because of bringing that person in, and I'm rewarded something that its purchasing power actually increased because that new player came in. It didn't actually devalue my purchasing power. It valued my purchasing power because there's a finite amount. When that new player came in, new money didn't get printed and injected. Like there's only 50 billion win. Like that's it. So what was being shared amongst, us playing the board and a new person comes in, they actually have to compete and join in the share of that same 50 billion. So it didn't travel with that person or past that person. It's a finite resource that has to be collectively shared amongst more people as new players come in. So now instead of, you know, me paying for my products and services with the amount of rewards that I had to pay to get that product and service actually can drop in number, not increase in number, which is what we're used to because of inflationary curves, because of a deflationary curve. More players come in, it actually takes less of my reward to get that same product and service. So, like, we all benefited from our community growing in this system. And it's the crucial point of us inviting new players to this new game of Monopoly because our ecosystem can become more robust, it can become more powerful because of having a finite currency of exchange for our products and services inside of the game. And we can continue to, you know, take that analogy into all of the different decentralized ecosystems in our broad and overall ecosystem. Instead of just that one example, all of them. Like I'm passing and going and I'm collecting rewards in all of our ecosystems, and I can land on one that is for beef. I can land on one that's for my power, one that's for my health and wellness, one that's for, uh, gold or silver, like literally anything within our ecosystem that we all collectively own on this board. I'm passing and going. And as more and more players come in and we're buying our products and services, it takes less and less of our digital rewards to get the same product and service because it's being shared amongst the players of the board. So it grows it all in unison together to become more powerful instead of this hidden game over here that those that are getting ahead of the curve are sucking up all of this extra value. Sure, it may take more and more of their currency, but they collected it on the front end, so they don't care about that. It's just an increasing number to them, even though it's actually decreasing, and they're collecting all of the wealth of all of the other players that have no chance to even compete in that game. So here we are still competing in a game of life. Like we're still like if someone provides more value, if someone takes more actions, they're going to be benefit to it. It's not like it's a true you know you do more work, you get the same value as someone that doesn't. That's not true. Like you still have a competitive nature, but everyone has a fair chance to come in and everyone benefits the more people that come into this game. Yep, Pam looked up the helicopter money. And that term literally just came from like if you think about if a helicopter dropped a pallet of money over a country to where that country was able to grab that money. It sounds good on the surface, but it's actually really, really, really bad whenever new money gets injected into a system. And I remember whenever I first thought about that, I used to always think that, like, why don't they just print millions of dollars and give it to everyone? Ron Paul used to have the analogy of the money elves, and he really made me understand the inflationary repercussions of quantitative easement and, new currency being injected into a system. His story was like, imagine the money elves show up last night, and they put $1 million in everyone's bank accounts. So everyone's excited, they're ecstatic that next day. They go out and they start buying all of the different things that they've never been able to buy. And, for a quick short term, it will stimulate an economy. But that's because everyone else, the rest of the world and within that country, don't realize everyone else got that same amount of money yet. So, people may go buy Ferrari or they may just really splurge on products and services that they normally didn't. Like they're actually freely spending money. And eventually the world's going to find out that all of this extra money came into the system. They're going to realize that what they used to have in their hand was worth more than it is worth now. So their prices are going to have to increase. And it does all kinds of crazy things. Think about overnight. What if everyone did go buy new cars? What if everyone went and bought, a Ford F-150 because they always wanted one, they wanted the newer one, and they couldn't afford it now, afford it before, but now they can. Well, Ford's going to have to tool up to this new surge of demand. They're going to have to build new factories. They're going to have to hire new people to be able to produce enough trucks for all of these new orders that came in. So now they have to go take loans because they didn't have the extra money to tool up for all of this. So now they're going to have to increase their prices a little bit. It's supply and demand, right? They don't have as much supply. They have to meet this new demand. The prices have to go up to meet this new economic model. And now they tooled everything up. People purchased all of this. Their money is gone, but the price of that F-150 didn't come back down. That money is in circulation now. So now prices are up here, and that scales all the way down to like even a gallon of milk, where the farmers had to do the same thing. So now milk is $10 a gallon when it was $4 a gallon. People's money is gone. They spend it all. They're not actually making that amount of money to sustain that. And life kind of goes back to normal, but the prices are up here. And if their wages stayed the same, now there's this huge price gap and they can't even afford to live anymore. So that's the big problem with injections of currency.
And the cool part about like our systems, it's like we have finite supply of our cryptographic units of measure, our tokens, right? And so as more people come in, there's less coins to go around. So it just creates that demand on it. This is very, very different than the current systems where they do that quantitative easing and helicopter money drops. People think in the current system, it's like, oh, I have more money, but they're not seeing the cost of that built into the price of products and services out there. You know, as demand comes for products and services, like, and inflation happens, like prices need to rise and it devalues the dollar or whatever dollar, Australian dollar, American dollar, euro. That's like literally how it works. And in our system, it's the total opposite. You know, because we have a fixed supply and there's no helicopter money here, as more people come and as our community grows, ours becomes more valuable because we're not just printing more and more. There's a finite supply. So we'll spend like another like 5 minutes. We'll do some Q&A. I have another meeting right after this on the Zoom account, so I gotta jump right at the top of the hour. But what did I want to say here? Oh, it comes back to my original point here, guys. It's like we're all capable of doing our part at whatever level we're at, you know, and it's small actions collectively that equal big results. You know, I do not expect everybody to be like a professional salesperson or a massive recruiter, but you need to understand the power in the many with very small actions, deliberate actions on a daily basis, right? So if I'm making it a point to tell myself wherever I can, I'm going to dedicate 1 to 2 hours per day of dedicated time to reaching out to a new person. It doesn't matter the result. It's just we're doing our part, right? I'm going to open up a conversation with somebody about this new system and what I'm doing. And I'm going to do that every day without expecting any results or anybody to join or anything or anybody to accept to give. That's on them. We need to do our part as a community. And when we all do that collectively, we've taken ownership and we start to become empowered. And think about the power. If there's just a few people doing that, it's harder to move and create the value for what we're doing. If everybody's doing it collectively at whatever level they can, that equals something massive. That equals a gravity, that equals a movement. And again, not everybody's going to bite or jump. These are like planting seeds, right? You need to pour water, give them sunlight, they grow, and then they start to bear fruits. That's how it works. So don't expect any type of instant results. But I'm telling you right now that if we do committed daily actions, even if it's just an hour a day, a half an hour a day, or reach out to one person a day, and do the things, have the conversations, invite them into like a presentation that I do, expose every day. I promise you that we will move quicker and what we're doing will become valuable. We speak from experience. We have done this before in this exact type of system. Our systems are better now. We did it in like kind of a half good system before with Gala, but we're doing it again now. And that's like, I think the biggest takeaway. If I could like, plant that seed into your mind, that's where I would want that that's where I would want you to think about. And it's like, how does that translate? It's like, so when you walk away from here, the question in your mind is like, what can I do to do that one action today? It's that simple. And it's like, set that goal and do those actions in that. And if we all do that, like, we're good. We'll start to move, guys. All of our tokens will start to, become stronger. Our community will grow. And that's really what we need, guys. And of course, I don't expect anybody to be a mass recruiter or salesperson. I'm not saying that, but like there's more power in a community of non-salespeople than a small sales team for sure.